Hey guys, today's video is going to be really interesting, and I'm not going to be talking about the usual Figma design tutorials or the laws of UX. What I would be talking about is a bit more pertinent, and it's about whether technology is value neutral. Before we move forward, we have to define what this whole thing is about and why I'm creating this video. Well, this video is going to be a prequel to the video where I talk about the responsibility that we have as creators when creating any technology or any application, any product or any service that we want to go ahead and put out into the world. But before we actually get to the moral responsibility, we have to understand that technology is not value neutral. But before we go actually forward with that, we have to define the terms so we're all on the same page when we're thinking about this. So first of all, what is technology? Well, this is directly from Google. Machinery and equipment developed from the application of scientific knowledge. So again, technology can be anything ranging from your phone to a pencil to the mattress that you sleep on to a fan or any device that you're using. It can also be a digital product. It can also be an application that you're creating or an experience that you're creating, or maybe even a service that you're providing. I know the service may not necessarily fall into the technology aspect, but I want this discussion to encapsulate anything that you're providing or putting out into the world and being a bit more morally responsible for that. Now, what do we mean by value neutral? Value neutral means that particular thing, service, whatever it is that you're putting out into the world does not promote or discourage the acceptance of any values, or it just basically does not promote or discourage any values. So now that we're thinking about it, what do you think? Like, what are the main points, or I guess just generally, what's the consensus on whether technology is neutral or not? Well, there can be some options. Like, there can be two options. Yes, technology only provides you with options. What you get to do with them depends upon you. This means that technology is neutral. It doesn't necessarily provide any values, or again, enhances or promotes any values. Rather, it's completely up to you, completely on the user, what he decides to do with it. And it doesn't necessarily lead. I'm using the word lead in a very specific way, and I'm using it very intentionally. The reason why I'm doing it is, what we're saying with this is, not only is technology neutral, but it does not also lead you to a specific direction. And we'll get to that a bit more later. The other option is, no, technology is value laden and has an impact on society. So obviously it has an impact on society either way, even if it's neutral or not. But this is more about its value laden. That means it impacts certain values, it propagates certain values, any technology, and then it also denounces or discourages certain values. So that's the other option. The third option obviously can be a middle ground, because we don't want to have a black and white fallacy. It can be, again, some technology can be value neutral, some can be value laden, so on and so forth. So let's explore these options in a bit more detail. According to the value neutrality thesis, which is a very popular thesis, technology is morally and politically neutral, neither good or bad. However, there has been a lot of debate around this, and a lot of people don't really agree with this particular point. But that is not to say that just because a lot of people don't agree with it, or a lot of people agree with it, that makes it right, which is not the case, obviously. That would also be a logical fallacy. What we have to realize is, if we actually make a statement like technology is value neutral or value laden, then that basically would be applied as a global or overarching terms to all technology. But what we have to do is delve a bit deeper on this. What do we think here when we actually look at this? This is something that comes up in this whole argument quite a lot of times. Again, it's more about a gun, and we usually have arguments like guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? But if you're just looking at it, if we're just looking at the possibilities of what happens when a person is given a gun, it actually enhances certain possibilities, right? Any product that you give to a certain user enhances certain possibilities that previously were not there. As an example, what were the ways in which a person can kill someone, right? Obviously, they can give them poison, they can, I guess, have a sword, they can stab them, do whatever. Obviously, that can be done. But with guns, what happens is you get a new possibility of easily killing someone, right? Obviously, you can use a gun. I'm not saying that people should not use guns as a blanket statement. They can use guns to obviously protect themselves from wild animals or protect themselves in case of riots or whatever it is. It depends on the situation. But normally, guns actually give you a way to be violent to someone. Whether you use that particular choice is completely up to you, but they're increasing the possibility of violence to a certain extent, and that increase of violence to a certain extent will definitely be exercised. You yourself can say, I'm not going to exercise that option. That's fine if you don't want to, but that in itself is always going to influence you, because that's going to increase the possibility of something that previously did not existed. So that's again something really important, that even if you say that guns don't kill people, people kill people, that's fine. Obviously, no one's debating that people kill people, but guns provide an additional way for people to kill people, right? The way previously was not really there. So again, that's really important. Similarly, if you're looking at certain examples of the printing press or the clock, so when the printing press was invented in Europe, the printing press caused the widespread availability of books and learning, sparking the Reformation, Counter-Reformation, and the early modern age. Similarly, the clock, which was originally developed by monks for the purpose of punctuality, following the canonical hours of their liturgy, but this technique eventually led to factory workers following regimented working hours and produced modern capitalism. And obviously, some can argue our obsession with being productive, or our obsession with actually maximizing the amount of time that we have, or let's say the concepts of being very punctual. Obviously, if we did not have the clock, that punctual aspect, that punctuality, the value of punctuality, the value of being very productive of our time may also not be there to at the same level, or perhaps at the same extent that it is today. Similarly, when we're talking about the printing press, if, for example, the Catholics, and not to put any blame on the Catholics or anything, but if certain Christian authorities actually kept the Bible for themselves and it was not open to interpretation by the general public, and there was a strict hegemonic control of the Bible of the Pope controlling the Bible or having the Bible on to the local population, then obviously it would be very hard for them to challenge the Pope on certain decisions, because again, those decisions may actually be in the Bible. So it's really important that there are certain technologies that actually enhance certain possibilities, and what those possibilities are can actually be discussed, right? Again, no one's saying that those possibilities may be bad or good. We're not talking about moral subjectivity or moral objectivity. Obviously, if you're talking about, again, there are no good universal standards of good and bad, we don't even want to treat the harm principle, we don't want to look at objective morality, then obviously every technology is value neutral, because there's no good and bad. On a subjectivist paradigm, there is no good or bad if you don't, again, even have a underlying principle like the harm principle or anything like that backing your subjectivist claim. So it's really important to know that if you have a certain stance that there is something good, inherently good, and then there is something bad, inherently bad, or maybe it's just your own subjectivist paradigm, which you agree is just on the surface level, then there are certain technologies that will promote certain behaviors. If we're going a bit deep on that, this actually is from the same article that was talking about the printing press and all of that. So technology simply adds new choices. Before the printing press, reading was simply not an available choice for most people. Before the clock, neither was getting up or going to work for a specific time. But obviously, that's the whole point. Yes, technology is giving them certain possibilities. They're enhancing their possibilities. They're enhancing their free will to a certain extent, because it gives them certain possibilities that they previously were not able to exercise. But those possibilities themselves are also value laden to a certain extent. They are also promoting certain values. The value of capitalism, the value of punctuality. Punctuality can be a value as well. Would we be as punctual as we are today without the advent of the clock? Probably not, right? The clock helps us be more punctual of our time, be more cognizant of time as a factor in our lives, which previously was not the case. Now, if we're looking at the mobile phone, the device, the size, how you interact with it, all of those things are produced merely by the fact of how small or how the dimensions or maybe the weight of the device, right? Imagine if the mobile phone was very heavy, it would be really hard to actually hold it in one hand, and you probably have to place it somewhere. Imagine if it was like 10 kilos or something. The amount of time you can hold it in your hand would definitely vary based on the weight that it has. The lesser the weight, the more time you can actually hold it in your hand without your hand feeling numb or tired. Similarly, the small screen actually also signifies certain things. If you have a really small screen, that means that that's a more personal experience. It's not a collective experience, similar to a television when you're actually looking at a television, or maybe when you're even playing a game on your PS4 or PS5 or on a desktop computer. It's not a solely personal experience. People can have a look at what you're doing, whereas on a mobile phone, that collective experience is narrowed down. Obviously, a person can actually still have a look at it just by standing behind you, but that would be totally awkward. And what's really important here is, how do people usually use their devices? You don't usually use them like this. You usually use them like this, and you tilt your head down. What does that indicate? That indicates an isolation from the world around you, because when you're looking down, in your peripheral vision, you're not looking at the other individuals sitting in the room. You're being alienated from those individuals as well. And all of these things, just the device, just the size of the device, just the weight, the gestures that you use, how you use them, where is your attention where you're using it, where's your peripheral vision, all of these actually have an impact on the side effects, or maybe they don't necessarily have to be the side effects, but maybe even, again, effects of a device on your life. And if we have a look at certain the harmful effects of mobile devices, we can have a look at stress as an example, sleep loss, accidents, anxiety, cyberbullying, vision problems. Like, if we just talk about these one at a time, we're talking about, let's say, stress. Obviously, now if you have a device and you have it on yourself all the time, you have applications like the social media where you can see everyone's success and all of that stuff, then obviously that is going to have a huge impact on your life, because now, previously, obviously, you did not have access to the data of all the individuals that are around you and their successes. Maybe once you met them, they can tell you about, again, their problems, their successes, or whatever. But usually on social media, we only primarily share our successes. So that can also lead to people feeling stressed or anxiety or depressed. Similarly, if we're talking about sleep loss, if you have such a small device that you can carry onto your bed, you can easily use while sleeping or before sleeping, not while sleeping, and you can keep on interacting with it even when the light is off, then obviously that's going to have a detrimental effect on your sleep cycle, because now anytime you get up, you can start using your mobile device, and that's going to obviously bring you in a more awake state. It's also going to influence when you go to bed, because you can keep on messaging someone without necessarily being in contact with them. Previously, you used to go out, and we can talk about like the days when we did not have that mobile device. You used to go out, you used to meet with your friends, your relatives, whatever. There was a time to sleep, you went to sleep, and obviously there was not a possibility of you talking to someone while you are in your bed. Maybe you can talk to your partner, but that's pretty much it, right? You can't really talk to the whole community or see what the community is up to while sleeping. But now you can do that, so that's obviously going to lead to sleep loss. Just the simple fact that, again, we have applications like social media, we have other gaming applications on your mobile device, which don't necessarily require you to be in a certain position, to be around certain individuals. That's definitely going to have an effect on your sleep. Similarly, accidents, when you're using your mobile device while you're driving or anything along those lines, I don't necessarily have to go to all of them, but as an example would be cyberbullying. Bullying previously existed, again, at a very personal, not at a very personal level, but actually in a physical space, right? It was rare that a person would be able to personally bully you previously, back in the days, and I'm talking about in purely in terms of quantitative numbers. Now the fact that you have access to another person's inbox or another person's social media, you can easily use that personal information to bully them, even if there's no one around. Obviously there's no one around because you now have a one-to-one connection with that individual. So all of these are harmful effects of mobile devices, and obviously the applications and all of that stuff that you have on your mobile devices. So it's really important to be cognizant and to be aware of the harmful effects that we're going to have when we create products like these. Again, I'm not saying that when the mobile device was created or when certain applications were created, they were created consciously by people to have certain consequences or have certain harmful effects, similar to filters, right? People use filters all the time on Instagram, on Snapchat, or whatever, and we have seen cases of people not being comfortable with their own identity, with their own personal selves, with their own standards of, like, obviously they have a completely deranged standard of beauty now, but they're not comfortable in their own skins, and some people even have opted for plastic surgery to look similar to what they look like in their filters, because they now want to actually play the identity of themselves as they use their filters. They want to have those filters applied on them at a real scale or in their real life. So again, all of these consequences, applications have these consequences, products have these consequences, and that is not to say that these consequences were intentionally caused, but rather they were previously perhaps not being thought of enough and have disastrous consequences. So again, if we just look at the mobile device again, the mere size, again, the mere weight of that device, how you actually have a look at it, it actually promotes certain values, right? It promotes individualism, because obviously it's a more individual experience. You can contact other individuals, but when you're actually interacting with your device, it's more of an individual experience. You're talking to someone one-to-one. You're talking to, maybe I'm talking to people around me on YouTube when I'm sharing this video, but that primarily is me talking to a device right now. The feeling or the exhilaration or the anxiety or the stress, confidence, whatever it is you want to call it, that experience, that collective experience that I may have gotten when I was probably talking to, let's say, thousands of individuals in a stadium or whatever, or maybe a city hall, is completely different from me talking to my webcam right now. So again, this individualized, this again device, this personal experience, the size, the weight, and everything actually leads to an individualized society. It leads to isolation. And there are certain values that are being promoted just by the, as I mentioned, just by the mere weight and size and scale of a particular device. Now, if the size and scale actually have such a huge impact, imagine what the content or the type of application that you're creating, or the privacy laws that you're going to have, or precautions that you're going to have in that application are going to have. Like, imagine all of the impacts that those things are going to have on your users. And that is why we have to be extremely morally conscious of the things that we're doing. As an example, if we're talking about possibilities of having a sexual relationship in the context of tightly knit communities, what was the possibility for that? Obviously, you can get married. That was easy. And I'm talking about days before the mobile devices, right? You can get married to be in that relationship. You can go out and you can meet a girl or a boy or whatever and form a relationship. Obviously, there was a lot of surveillance in tightly knit communities, parents asking where you're going. At the very least, that's the case right now in my community. Limited contact opportunities. Obviously, you cannot contact them when you're at home. It's not really easy. If you phone them, obviously the phones weren't available. You probably have to use a public phone or a phone that's placed within the locality or within the collective. So again, it's really hard, and there are really less opportunities for engagement. You can also go to clubs, but again, clubs weren't really as prominent as well. Even clubs, the concept of clubs promotes certain values, right? Clubs aren't really as common in our societies, but they may be common even before mobile devices in certain societies. And the very idea of clubs and this engagement is actually promoting a certain value. So these were some of the possibilities, and it was really hard again to do all of that, because you have to put yourself out there. You have to, again, maybe sometimes challenge the norms. You have to maybe sometimes, again, just be out of your comfort zone to do all of these things. But now, what can you do? You can download an application. There's obviously ease of communication. You can have someone on WhatsApp even after you met them. You can talk to them night and day, anytime you want. You can arrange anything, any meeting, anything. It's obviously much easier. It's also personal. Obviously, there's less scrutiny. No one can scrutinize you when you're in your room or maybe even in your bathroom. You can do all of that stuff without necessarily being caught, if being caught is a concern, right? And you don't have to put yourself out of the comfort zone. All of that interaction, all of that initial friction that you previously had can now be covered with the mobile device. You can understand someone's interest. You can find out what they're all about before even talking to them, which again makes the journey even easier, and obviously takes a lot of social responsibility off you, and the ability for you to be social as well, because now you don't have to do that and another application is actually doing that for you. You don't have to risk your personal reputation as well. So there's a lot in the ease of having such a relationship now compared to what it was previously, and the amount of effort that you need to put in previously. But that's also at a cost of you losing certain skills as a social being, right? So again, that's really important. What I want to again talk about in the next video is, with all of that stuff, all of the stuff that I've been talking about, we've been talking about a lot of UX laws, we've been talking about a lot of impact that again these applications may have, or these products may have, services, whatever it is, may have on users. So what I want to get to next is, now that we understand that technology is not value neutral, it certainly propagates certain values, it discourages certain values as well. It, as we've talked about the mobile device, it actually enhances individuality rather than collectivism and all of that stuff. All of these things actually come at a great cost, and that cost is our responsibility. How users use it, obviously that's there are going to be some users that are going to use any technology in a bad way, but that's not to take any burden off of us. We still have a burden of being very conscious and morally responsible for the applications and for anything that we're creating, any product. Again, if you're a moral subjectivist and you don't really want to hold any idea of a good or bad, or you think these are just, again, constructs, then it doesn't really matter. Again, if an application is causing someone to kill someone, or if an application is causing abuse or cyberbullying or anything along those lines, if you don't have a strict moral standard, if you don't have a global standard, I'm going to talk about a global standard, if you don't have a global or a universal or objectivist standard, then all of these things can fade away, because again, who defines what morality is? Who defines what good or bad is? But if you have, like normal people, an understanding that there is something that's inherently good and something that's inherently bad, whether that's through the harm principle, whether that's through any other higher authority or anything along those lines, then you have to start thinking about what the impact of your efforts, of anything that you're doing, anything that you're creating is going to have on not only your users but the community in general. And that's something that we're going to be talking about in the next video. Again, it was great talking to you. I know this was a long video, but definitely share your thoughts and leave any feedback that you have. And let me know what you think about videos like this, where I talk about some of the more pertinent issues, which I think are things that we really think about. We, again, are very monotonous. We think about skills, we think about all of that, but we rarely think about human, or maybe even, again, cultural, or just generally well-being of the whole planet. So again, that's pretty much it. Do subscribe, do hit the bell icon, do throw me any comments, like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.